Let's bring in our guests here on the show today. On the left, we have Ben Wikler, Washington director of MoveOn.org, host of The Good Fight as well. And over here on the set as well, we have Javier Manjarres, managing editor of SharkTank.com or SharkTank.net. .com. Can never get it right.
You bailed her out for pronouncing my last name.
We were practicing in the break. Well, first, guys, I want to focus it back because this is obviously a very concerning situation, what took place down in ISA. But Ben, I want to start with you. We see this foiled plot over in Australia here, and we hear also from the administration that there's no direct threat to the United States. Are they wrong? Does this Australian plot tell us something else?
Well, it's great that Australia foiled this plot. That's what you want to see when terrorists plot. You want to stop the plots, and you want to not be terrorized. So the United States intelligence community is constantly scanning the horizon and scanning across the country for potential threats. And what we hear, what's been reported, is that our intelligence community sees, plotting from Al-Qaeda, but it has not detected specific plots threatening the United States. Obviously, the administration and everyone is on high alert for any potential threat like that, but we haven't seen it here yet. I think the question is, in a situation like that, should we be sending boots on the ground in Iraq and Syria, which is what we've been hearing a lot from John McCain, from our neocon friends, and Javier from you. And that on the ground in Iraq and Syria, which is what we've been hearing a lot from John McCain, from our neocon friends. And
But Ben, that doesn't really answer my question because, there is a specific threat now that's been uncovered by the Australian authorities. It leads one to believe that there could be a similar plot here in the United States. And so it kind of flies in the face of what the administration has been talking about, kind of dismissing the fact that this could happen or something similar could happen here in the U.S.
The administration spoke, I think, very measuredly about the potential for a threat to the homeland to emerge and the fact that they don't have specific information about a plot right now. They didn't talk about whether they had information about a plot in Australia. And clearly, the United States and Australian intelligence community work very closely together, and Australia did detect a plot and it foiled it. That's what you want to see from our intelligence apparatus. I would be, I have to say, very surprised if the administration were detecting plots and weren't talking about them at the same time as it's making the case for military intervention to the American people. That's the kind of thing that you actually would talk about if you're trying to convince the American people to enter an expanded military presence. So right now, we don't have evidence of specific plots here in the United States, and we're very glad that our friends in Australia stopped a plot there.
So, Javier, to you now. You hear what Ben has to say. Some interesting points there about these plots. What's your take on that?
What about the plot 2 days ago where they uncovered with a guy in New York when it was plotting to recruit ISIS militants, whether they're going there or not? Look, there's plots all over the place that we haven't uncovered, or they have uncovered and they haven't divulged to the press. Look, this is, again, a global war on terror. What is President Obama? I think President Obama has finally come to terms that this is a global war on terror, an Islamic war on terror against Islamic fundamentalism. Look, the threat is there, and we're going to see more and more of these thwarted attacks that we saw in Australia, but unfortunately, a lot of them are going to slip through the cracks. So we're going to have actual attacks occur, and it's just a matter of see how President Obama and the country comes together and addresses these issues once these attacks come, because they're going to come.
Javier, what do you think could be done to prevent similar attacks being conducted then within the United States?
Well, how I think they should be handling is how they should have handled all along is keep their mouth shut, not divulge what's happening. Let the intelligence community do what they do best and thwart these, and maybe not announce that we thwarted an attack. Maybe just keep it under wraps. Maybe send these people off to let them deal with black op organizations or hideouts around the world. We don't even know about these threats unless it's imminent, unless it gets leaked to the press. But I think that's the best way of handling this, is keeping their mouth shut.
All right, let's take a step back and look at the strategy President Obama is trying to use now. President Obama remains optimistic that the fight against ISIS is one that the United States will not be taking on alone. Let's take a listen to what the president recently had to say.
But, and this is something I want to emphasize, this is not and will not be America's fight alone. One of the things we've learned over this last decade is America can make a decisive difference. But I want to be clear. The American forces that have been deployed to Iraq do not and will not have a combat mission. The American forces that have been deployed to Iraq do not and will not have a combat mission for their own country against these terrorists.
Now, Ben, just yesterday we heard from the new Iraqi
ground as they fight for their own country against these terrorists.
Now, Ben, just also know that top military commanders like General Ray Odierno say we are going to need ground troops. So again, you have this discordant message coming from the top ranks of the military and then a different message coming from the administration.
So if you take a step back and look at the situation, it's clear that if we sent ground troops,
Different message coming from the administration.
So if you take a step back and look at the situation, there's no about that. The question is, could they actually solve this problem? And the answer to that is no. It's clear that this is a civil war. It's happening in two countries. There's a civil war, Sunni versus Shia in Iraq, and because the Iraqi government has been so terrible at dealing with Sunni concerns, ISIS now has, at least tacit support from a bunch of Sunnis in that country. And in Syria, there's a raging civil war with a whole bunch of different parties. So the United States, could send ground troops and could, secure some cities, what have you, but that civil war would rage on. This is something that can only be solved politically, and that's why the president is saying we should not send in ground troops, and that's why he's right.
Javier?
This will never end. This is not just a civil war. This is a holy war. These people are fighting for an Islamic ideology, an extreme ideology. So regardless if the U.S. sends troops or not, and let's say they take out ISIS, someone else is going to pop up. We saw ISIS come out of Al-Qaeda. So this is going to go on for years and years and years. This is bigger than what people think. So it's going to pop up. We saw ISIS come out of Al-Qaeda. So this is going to go on for years and years and years. This is stabilize the area, because you can't just do it from the ground, from the air, like President Bill Clinton did. But this is a long-term holy war that we're not going to win.
Yeah, and of course, we've also heard the administration talking about the U.S. interests and assets that are currently still in Iraq. We've got the U.S. Embassy there in Baghdad.
Yep.
Should things get worse there, and we could maybe see that happening with the lack of strength coming from the Iraqi army, what do you do to protect the U.S. Embassy and other interests there, including the Kurdish forces, too, in the north, which really aren't getting the support directly from the United States government. Let's also take a look at what some other elected members of Congress are currently saying right now. We heard from Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah. He offered up some strong words on the situation. Here he is, and we'll get a reaction on the back end.
I don't know which one scares me more. Does he not know? Is he oblivious to it as the Homeland Security Secretary? Or is he going to be deceptive and just try to, run out the clock and not really answer the question?
Chaffetz talking about Jay Johnson, the Homeland Security Secretary. And, we talk about that Australian threat. Of course, we still have the issue on our southern border. Javier, we're getting a kind of a piecemeal strategy. And we haven't heard a lot about the southern border.
Well, we already know that there's been terrorist activity south of the border. People have already, the government alone has announced that we have other than Mexicans coming across the border on their website. So we know there's an Islamic threat coming across the border. Nothing's been done. Nothing's been addressed at the border, unfortunately. But look, that has to be done. But what's going to make the U.S. government or Obama do something about it is when we have another 9/11, unfortunately, and it's going to happen. We're going to have more attacks, whether they're these lone wolf attacks that they're warning about now, or you're going to have mass attacks by these Islamists or other people who are supporting Islamists, like a lot of these Mexican cartels who are working alongside with these Islamic terrorists.
Ben, about 30 seconds to you now. Do you think that another attack here in the United States is inevitable?
I hope and I pray that it isn't. And I think the most important thing is, as we face this possibility, not to throw ourselves into a civil war that could last for decades, whether or not we're there. That's not the solution to make America safer.
All right, fair enough. And I want to change topics, too, while we have you here, Ben, because there's a new poll released by Gallup here. It shows favorability moving in the direction of the GOP just a few months out here from the midterm. It's up on our screen right here. Is this looking better for the GOP now, or do you think your Democrats can pull it out?
When you look at that poll, what you see is the GOP's favorability edging back to where it was before the shutdown, which was kind of the biggest political own goal, self-injury of the last decade. The fact that the GOP is now as disapproved as it was just before the shutdown is not exactly evidence for a Republican wave. Neither party has much approval because people are disgusted with Washington. And right now, Republicans have a pretty big presence in Washington. I think they need to watch out.
All right, we'll see what happens. The trend line definitely in their favor, guys. Ben Wikler, thanks so much for being with us. Also, Javier Manjarres with us here on the set. Always good to get you guys' take on strategy, politics, and the like. We'll check back in with you, of course, very soon here. And, of course, much more to come here on America's Forum. We'll be back after this short commercial break. And we still have J.D. Hayworth, guys, with us up live in Washington, D.C. right now.
Enjoying it there.
Enjoying it very much. This is one of the few times of the year when they have some nice weather up there. But also great to see J.D. up there reliving his days and the contract with America. I know you're a nostalgic fan, too.
He relives his day every day here. But you know what? I really appreciate Ben's little soccer analogy there. Shout out soccer.
We got to go. We're back after this.